Hello, everyone. This is the BitcoinMeister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is October the 9th, 2020. Strong hand, long-term thinking. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Be a unique beast. We have three unique beasts here. One day closer to an all-time high. I'm offended by selling. 5-digit realm. All righty, everyone. We are back live on a beautiful Friday morning in the United States. Brandon Quittem makes his debut today. John Vallis returns. Phil Geiger also returns. I am really pumped about this crew. They've got a lot to say. So it was funny. I was talking to these guys at the beginning of the week, and I was trying to come up with stories. I didn't have any stories yet. I know, there's always something to talk about in Bitcoin. And then comes the end of the week, and bam, 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 Square, Jack Dorsey. Oh my, the government speaks. All of a sudden, we got news pouring out of the yin-yangs of everybody. Oh my, we'll start with Phil here. So yeah, Jack Dorsey, Square, they bought like close to 5,000 Bitcoin. I value my wealth in Bitcoin. I don't care how much that's worth in millions of dollars. It's like almost 5,000 more Bitcoin off the market. It's like MicroStrategy, but smaller, but a bigger name in terms of CEOs there, Dorsey. So what do you think about this, Phil? What was your take? Am I just going too crazy? Is this the start of something much bigger?
No, I think this is a pretty reasonable first purchase for Square's dollar cost average strategy. So I imagine that they're going to be putting in kind of $50 million every few months moving forward now. But it's a pretty good first purchase. It's exciting to see more companies jumping in. When MicroStrategy announced their big purchase, I was telling people, this isn't just a one-off thing. This is like the first of a series of companies that are now going to start allocating to Bitcoin as part of their reserve assets. So exciting to see Jack be that second, or I guess Square being that second company taking the step. They've been a big supporter of Bitcoin with open source contributions and Cash App being Bitcoin only. So it's great to have, I think, other companies taking the leap and actually holding Bitcoin as part of their treasury.
Now this is making mainstream publications also, I notice. Do you think he's pitching it to Twitter? Because again, Twitter is separate from Square, and so do you think Twitter could do something like this?
Absolutely. I think it's starting to make more and more sense for pretty much every company that is holding cash right now. Right, cash is trash. It's a melting ice cube, according to Giga Chad Sailor. So if you're sitting on cash right now, you're wondering, what the hell do I do with it? And the options are just so bad out there. Like, are you really going to put it into some stonks? Are you going to put it into gold? It's yellow rock. No, if you want to preserve your company's wealth, Bitcoin, I think, is the clear choice. So pretty much every company right now, especially public companies that are sitting on a lot of cash, are going to start investigating Bitcoin. And I think we'll see many, many more allocate to it. So yeah, Twitter, I don't know if they'll be the next company, but I imagine that they're having those conversations up at the CEO and executive level.
Now, I was just reminded by my elite friends in the chat that you called him a Giga Chad, the Michael Saylor. I called him Bitcoin Noah, because he mentioned something about Bitcoin being like Noah's Ark or something. I talked about it on yesterday's show. All right, people in the live chat, though, if you have questions, we have answers. If you type in BitcoinMeister, you do a super chat, we can answer your questions. Also, dudes watching this live, retweet the show. I just put it out there to spread the word, to get everybody here to finally hear the glory of Brandon, who has never been on the show before. So I am really looking forward to this, dude. Brandon, what is your take on this situation on Square?
Yeah, for sure. And first off, Adam, thanks for having me on. I love these guys, so happy to be here. A couple things with Jack. So first of all, it feels like the man is setting an example for the rest of the world. It feels like he's pretty much just legitimizing Bitcoin, de-risking Bitcoin in all these different categories, saying that, hey, if you take us seriously, you can also take Bitcoin seriously. So I think that in general is just really powerful. And it's going to be a slow moving thing. And I think Jack gets that. The next thing I thought was interesting here is that Pierre was chirping at Jack ever since Saylor made the announcement. Like, why doesn't Square have Bitcoin on the balance sheet? And I have to think that Jack and the team responded to the criticism. I could be wrong here, but it sure feels like it. And so I just thought about this about 5 seconds ago, but instead of peer pressure, it's Pierre pressure. And Jack folded.
Pierre pressure, pound that like button, dudes. But wait a second. When did they actually make this purchase? Maybe he folded and finally like revealed that they did this. I mean, it had to have been done some time ago. I would think. I don't think it can. I mean, who knows? Who knows? Well, do you think this is who's next? Who's next, Brandon? Or do you think next week we're gonna hear about two? Like when Michael Saylor made the announcement, shortly after that we heard about small companies. But now that we have two pretty big companies out there, are we gonna start hearing this every week? Is this gonna be a weekly occurrence or monthly occurrence?
I don't think we're there yet. I think Jack limping in here is a good sign, but they're already poised for it. They probably had very little hoops to go through. There might even been a corporate control where Jack can sign a paper for $50 million. I don't know. I think it's going to be slower, and I think Michael Saylor's right that legitimate companies who want to pull this off are going to have a lag time just to get through the process. And so I think it's a great sign, but I don't think we're going to see like every month now tier one orgs buying Bitcoin. I think maybe in the next year we'll see some more.
Okay. Now let me see. There was one quote I wanted to read that has to. I have so many things open here. Adoption should proceed from the ones that gain the least from the fiat system to the most. Savers, small businesses, corporations, cartels, vassal states, ruling states. I like that progression right there. That was from Ben Westgate. Now, John, what is your take on this? And how soon should we see? When are we going to hear about the first country buying? And it's probably already happened, but we just haven't heard yet. So, John, take it away.
Yeah, well, on that point of it's probably already happened. I mean, who knows? I think, conventional wisdom is that the smaller, more agile countries that are, where it's less big news, they have a little bit more flexibility with what they do with their, central bank balance sheet, for example. That's conceivable that they do already, or in the next year or two, they will have an allocation. But I think, a lot has been made about the career de-risking of the Saylors and the Squares and those moves. And prior to that, Paul Tudor Jones. And I think that's legit. I mean, you've got, especially in the case of Jones, you've got these massive kind of, behemoths of the industry that have just, to all those younger, guys and gals doing that work, now they can talk about it without getting laughed out of the room, which is huge. And I think that's happening at a corporate level now in corporate boardrooms and things like that. But it's also important to recognize that, public companies are most often, they're extremely apprehensive about the news that they release, because everything that they do, especially these days, is predicated around their stock price. So they have to be very careful what they communicate to the public. And I think that now, I don't think Square moved too much, but I mean, even the fact that it didn't decline on the news, and then of course we know MicroStrategy, when they released the news of their two purchases, had a big boost in their stock price. I think that signals to the market, one, like this is an acceptable thing for us to explore, because it seems like shareholders and investors like this move. But two, I think we'll see some companies that already have it on their balance sheet, maybe just did it as a private thing and maybe a small allocation. They may come out and say, we did this over the last 6 months, over the last 12 months, now that they know that the news is not going to punish them. The news of doing it is not going to punish them. So I think over the next year, like Saylor said, they fast-tracked it and they sorted it out in 3 to 6, how to facilitate this on their balance sheet. I think that's probably what's going on now. And I think the macro landscape puts even more pressure on that. So I wouldn't be surprised, 2021, if we see a lot of this sort of activity,
Yeah, I got to ask a question. I don't like to talk about the price of Bitcoin, but it's clear once the news broke, it pumped up the price of Bitcoin. John, I'll stick with you. Do you have any thoughts on that? On that good news actually pumped up the price of Bitcoin there? And I mean, this, for me, again, I'm sticking with what I said back in, I guess, September now, that the MicroStrategy news was the biggest news of the year, that it's just it's so huge that finally we have companies making this announcement, and it should pump the price of Bitcoin. It should get people excited about buying it. But what's your take on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, news like that, I guess, always has a temporary boost on price. But if anything, I've been somewhat surprised at how subdued the price has been over the last 12 to 18 months, with all of this seeming like a lot of tailwinds around Bitcoin. And I'm not complaining about it, because it's wonderful for those of us who are stacking as aggressively as we can. But so I don't make much of the price moves. As we all know, you can't really predict the price of Bitcoin. It does its own things. There's too many inputs to really, nobody can predict what it's going to do. But in my mind, all of this is, almost already, I don't want to be too hubristic, but it's almost already written. Companies are going to start trickling in. It'll be a trickle, and then it'll be a flood, and the price will ultimately reflect that. What happens in the midterm with the short sellers, and what whales do and all this stuff. I mean, it's too hard to predict. So I don't get excited about boosts off news, even like MicroStrategies. For me, it just ticks the box, like, okay, big corporate public companies are coming in now. And what I think is really interesting about MicroStrategies move is, it's amazing that the first one to set that price, like Square, let's say Square was the first one. Okay, they limp in with 50 million. It makes total sense. Jack has Bitcoin in his Twitter handle. Square is heavily involved in the industry. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It probably should have happened earlier. And they limp in, right? But instead of that being the first, and everyone just kind of looking at that and saying, well, of course they would. Any other public company would just be like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean we should. They're in the Bitcoin business. They sell Bitcoin. It's a huge part of their business. So that doesn't mean much. But to have a company that's not at all in the industry and come in so heavily, I just think those two things put so much pressure on everyone else now. Like, can we really limp in with 1% of our treasury? I mean, you think I could just put 90% in? We're looking a little weak over here. Maybe we should put 10. Maybe it should be 25. So I think that dynamic may accelerate out of the gate how this process unfolds in terms of corporate buying, because you got GigaChat up there just saying, like, you wussies, what are you doing with your 1%?
Dude, you just read my mind. So pound that like button. We're going to talk about the 1% allocation right now. Wow, you really did. If you are a company and don't have more than 1% of your cash reserves in Bitcoin, are you failing to manage your treasury responsibly? That is a quote I got from Fiscantes. It's linked to below. Everything I talk about is linked to below, everybody. But also at the same time, Roman Q had a question. What percent of a company's treasury is a reasonable first purchase? Strong hands and conviction take time to develop. Companies might panic sell if first buy is too big. So Phil, do you have any thoughts on that? Is there a 1% rule here, or what's your advice for treasury purchases?
My advice for treasury purchases is any amount that isn't zero. Whatever you're comfortable with, like, you got to get off zero, guys. It's 2020 now. Bitcoin's been around for over a decade. It's not going anywhere. In fact, every day that it sticks around, it's stronger. So the longer you wait, I think there's a quote out there that's like, everybody buys in at the price that they deserve. I think companies, have an opportunity right now to allocate some part of their treasury into Bitcoin, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you can get sign off for, and dip your toe in the water, see how it is. If you don't like it, convert it back to US dollars. I think people, they look at Bitcoin and they're like, I think it seems like a black hole to them a lot of times, where it's like, if you buy Bitcoin, you're stuck with Bitcoin forever. And, we all know in reality, it's one of the most liquid assets out there. You can convert it nearly instantly into any other currency around the world, faster than you can convert probably gold to any other currency, right? So get some Bitcoin, see how it feels to own it, and then start allocating more. I think the dollar cost average strategy applies to the rational Bitcoin hodler as well as mega corporations. And I'm stealing Brandon's term, Pierre pressure. But I noticed, I think after Square purchased their 50 million, Pierre was out there asking, "Hey, when is JP Morgan gonna buy some Bitcoin? When is Citibank gonna buy some Bitcoin?" So it's all just a matter of time. I mean, as it continues to survive and grow and get stronger, the risk reduces, and then you have these companies that are already taking steps, clearing the way for people to make those investments. At some point in time, I think it becomes irresponsible to hold 0% Bitcoin.
All right, Brandon, we're going to ask you multiple questions here. You can comment on what you think the proper percentage is, but I also want to note what was talked about on my show yesterday by a commenter. None of these companies, they're not diversifying into other cryptocurrencies. There's no diversification for the sake of diversification here. They're just getting Bitcoin so far, and I think we'll see that trend continue. But here in the space of regular dudes, everyone's got to have a crypto portfolio. I really dislike that word, because my crypto portfolio is just Bitcoin, and it appears these big companies, their crypto portfolios are just Bitcoin also. So Brandon, do you ever see these companies diversifying into other cryptos? And what's your take on a percentage that a company should invest into Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I think the hardest is the first basis point from a treasury perspective. So I completely agree with Phil. Any amount is a big deal. We know how this stuff works. It takes a while to learn. They have a lot of shareholders to get on board here. And so just dipping your toes in will create the ripple that we need. In terms of, will they diversify into other coins besides Bitcoin? There's a chance that happens, but I think that would be a mistake. We know that money is a network technology. It converges to one. They are substitute goods. And so there's not really any point. You don't gain any diversification benefits by owning things other than Bitcoin, because they all are correlated to Bitcoin. And so it doesn't make financial sense. It's a lot more risky. It's a lot more expensive to store. If they think holding Bitcoin is going to bring some heat, imagine something that they never heard of, that no one on the planet can even describe what it is. That's not going to work out so well for them. So I don't see that anytime soon, if ever. One thing I had to bring up with regard to the Bitcoin price, I have a slightly different take here. I think in the short term, Bitcoin's experiencing mostly headwinds. And over the long term, I'm as bullish as I've ever been, converting as much fiat as I can to Bitcoin every month. And so is everyone else I know. However, there are some things in the short term that are headwinds. Bitcoin has been correlated to the equities market, so it's acting like a risk asset. And fear of Biden getting into the office would push down equities markets. Bitcoin will get pushed down with that as well. BitMEX is taken down. That's a huge amount of liquidity. A lot of people played there. Ultimately, I think that's a long-term good thing, but in the short term, that should push the price down. And I know we're going to talk about Hedgeye CEO, but in his cutesy little quad 4 metric, he talks about the GDP decelerating at the same time as inflation decelerating. And I think that's true. I think that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. And so under those conditions, all risk assets will be pushed down just a little bit. And so in the face of all that, the Bitcoin bulls are defending 10K. And I find that to be extremely bullish. And so whenever we're ready to let this thing rip, I think it's going to really soar.
All right. I like that, Con. You're a realist there. And yeah, you're very realistic to say that, well, I'm putting words in your mouth here, but you're implying it. None of these corporations, I don't see them buying DeFi tokens. I don't see that happening anytime soon for all you DeFi freaks. But hey, we're not talking. I don't think there's any time to even talk about DeFi today. It hasn't had a good week, but you never know for those dudes out there. But Bitcoin's the next Bitcoin. I want to. I didn't get to ask you about huge entities like corporations are buying Bitcoin, but even bigger entities like countries. So when do you see that starting, or have the countries started buying already, Brandon?
I don't have any special insight here. I would agree with general sentiment that smaller nations who are sort of under the thumb or the boot heel of the American dollar hegemony, I think those type of nations have the incentive to do so. We see that with Venezuela, Iran. Where's Borat from? Kazakhstan. They have a lot of hash power. And so you add all this up and it's pretty clear where the trend is. I don't think buddies with the US government are going to take a risk here because they're in pretty good position. But yeah, I think we'll see the small nations fall. And I think that as soon as we see a tier 1 or tier 2 nation, something that the average person would say, wow, to, I think that's when the floodgates open. And I don't know if we're there yet. I think the dollar is going to spiral, and I think we're going to see the next decade sort of break down the current order, and we're going to rebuild again. And during that period, we'll start to see a lot more nation states buy some Bitcoin.
Dudes, pound that like button for Borat getting mentioned on this show. That's why I have the best freaking guest in the space here, the most unique beast when you hear Borat mentioned in a Bitcoin-related comment there. So, oh my! All right, dudes. John and Phil, do you have anything else to say about this topic before we move on? Any Borat comments or anything else with Jack Dorsey?
Yeah, I think it's my suspicion that many countries are accumulating Bitcoin already. They're not going to be public about it. We know that the U.S. government has sold Bitcoin, the seized Bitcoin that they have. I imagine that they haven't sold all of the Bitcoin that they've seized. So I'm not sure if they're necessarily buying Bitcoin, but we know that they have some Bitcoin. And I think that's probably consistent with many countries around the world. They're not going to go out and be public about it because Bitcoin directly competes with their currency. But the smartest guys in the room right now are taking a look at Bitcoin and figuring out how to get some exposure to it. So I imagine that some countries are doing that as well.
Everyone out there, don't let the countries beat you to the punch. Sorry, I interrupted someone there.
No, I would just add to that I think, just like all of us, the era, there's so much good information out there now that the era of everyone having to kind of be evangelical about this, and like the hardcore Bitcoiners being out there destroying their OPSEC just to get this into the public consciousness is coming to an end. So I think whether the corporates may be a bit different because they may stand to benefit from from an announcement like this, but especially in the case of nation states, I think they understand the value of OPSEC, and they will accumulate this on the sly and only reveal it when they have to. When it comes time where they, for whatever reason, have to signal that they've done this. Otherwise, if they're able to accumulate privately, which I presume they are, they will do so. And they'll just be stacking their sats and being quiet about it, because I think we're all entering this era where there's probably going to be more repercussions for being public about this stuff. And I'm not necessarily saying like there's a big clampdown coming soon, but more so just because there's so much good information and resources out there about this stuff. You heard Saylor refer to all the resources that he consulted to come to his. He was orange pilled so, hard and fast that's why he made the move that he did. And he was orange pilled that way because of the writing from Unchained and Parker Lewis, and because of a bunch of the great podcasts out there. And so that's all there now for people to consume. And I think, I just think they're going to be able to consult that and stack quietly. And that's probably going to be the best move moving forward.
All right, let's go back to Brandon here. We're talking about governments a little bit there at the very end. I'm going to ask you about the United States Attorney General, Department of Justice releases cryptocurrency enforcement framework. What's your take? Explain this to us, to Brandon. What's your take on this, and what's this all about?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things I sort of highlighted here that I found to be interesting. But from a high level, what it feels like is they understand more than we think they do. They're putting out some information that indicates that. And it's sort of like, hey, this technology is mostly good, but we got to protect you from the bad guys. And so to me, that's just a giant nanny state blanket being put over the people. The one quote that I want to pull out to emphasize that is they say, and I quote, "For cryptocurrency to realize its truly transformative potential, it's imperative that these risks be addressed." And so on paper that, you could say that sounds kind of nice, it's truly transformative, whatever. But to me, what that means to ensure the illegality stuff that doesn't happen, that means they can do whatever they want. And so this is more of the same from my perspective there. I don't think it's a good thing. I think that they're going to enforce KYC as far as they possibly can. Trying to think what else is super important. Like, I think, we can talk about the privacy coins, and there's a lot of stuff there. I don't want to highlight all the good stuff, but my most important point here is that we're currently living in a hyper globalized world, and all the countries that are buddies with the government, with the US, they share information. We know this. And so I don't really like that. That's not good for everyone. And I foresee a period of isolationism coming around the globe. It's already starting to happen. I would say peak globalization was probably 5-10 years ago. And so I hope that we see manufacturing come back to the US. I hope we take our aircraft carriers back to our seas and just go through a period of isolationism. And I think that'll be good for America, it'll be good for the globe, and it'll also be good for cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, et cetera, because what we don't want is all the nation states on the same team against the people. We want them to be competitive in the same way that we want private industry to be competitive with the government and not buddied up. And so I'm optimistic long-term that if we go to a period of isolationism, Bitcoin will be in a much better position. And I think that the writing's on the wall there. How long does it take? I have no idea. But that's what I'm optimistic about.
Yeah, I always get the nanny state feel from whenever the government tries to help us with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. But yet they said that the Department of Justice states it has jurisdiction over foreign crypto companies that touch U.S. servers. So anywhere in the world you are, if you're dealing with cryptocurrency, the United States government must protect its citizens. So if you do something the United States government doesn't like, and you're in Eastern Europe and you somehow dealt with an American citizen, be on the lookout. Now, I want to go back to the privacy coin stuff in a second, but let's go to Phil real quick with the basic stuff here. What was your take on the report?
It was somewhat expected to me. I mean, I think this is, I think Matt Odell or Marty said, then they fight you. So I think that this type of report is kind of to be expected. What I will say is, if you have obtained your Bitcoin legally, or even without going through the sort of KYC on ramps, as long as you're holding your private keys, you have unilateral control over your Bitcoin. So even if it is designated eventually as illegal in some jurisdiction or another, if you've taken control of your private keys, it still requires authentication and authorization from you to move the Bitcoin. So I think what I recommend is kind of what I traditionally recommend, which is if you're using an exchange, withdraw your Bitcoin into your control. If you're comfortable using coin mixing services, I think it's an interesting way to break up the history of your UTXOs. I wouldn't rely on them 100% to be totally anonymous. But I think the most powerful thing that we can be doing as Bitcoiners right now is taking control of private keys.
All right. Always control your private key. If it's not, not your keys, not your coin. People learn that the hard way, especially when the government goes shutting down certain exchanges where you think your Bitcoin is safe. All right, John, you're Canadian. What's your take on this?
It's like I think that this creeping KYC and this creeping regulatory enforcement is, again, to be expected. It's not like we thought we would get away without stuff like this, and I think this is just the beginning. Excuse me. But I think what we're gonna, on the one hand, I feel like the magnitude of the oppression in one area just increases the value of its kind of antithesis in another. Now, whether that's from a state-to-state basis or country to country, like I think this is ultimately how this plays out. And I think the social pressure that comes on Bitcoin is going to probably exacerbate the impetus for regulatory change, because if we keep seeing this sort of divide and imbalances that we see in the economy and socially, then Bitcoiners will probably be vilified in the not too distant future if things play out the way we always talk about them on Twitter. So I think all you can do right now is best practices, as you guys all just mentioned. Make sure you're doing best practices in terms of basically securing and managing your keys. And if you do that, then you're in a position to adapt to whatever comes down the pike. And that's all you can do. I mean, what else can you do? So, and Bitcoin bestows the ultimate optionality. And I know we're all in different stages of our lives and different kind of, on the scale of kind of rootedness where we are with families and homes and what have you. But, we're playing this is a pretty big game afoot here, and it's going to play out over decades. And if we're really committed to seeing it through, we need to have all options on the table. And I just think as much as we don't want to be pushed out of our cities, states, countries, whatever, if the regulatory environment becomes so onerous at some point that we have to be, then Bitcoin gives us the optionality to do that. And I think there will be jurisdictions that will be more accommodating for people that want to do so. But that being said, I think the real race is, how fast can we get this into as many hands as possible of decision makers and other influential people? I mean, if half of Congress and a ton of corporate treasuries and a ton of private individuals own this stuff, I think it's going to be really hard to wind back the clock or put any sort of really restrictive regulations on top of it. So that's kind of the part of the value of the evangelical people like all of us at this point, is kind of making sure that it gets distributed as quickly as possible, because that kind of actually may be relevant.
Senators aren't going to make something illegal that they already hold, most likely. But I want to say you're absolutely right. If your jurisdiction gets intolerable, you can't tolerate it anymore. You be in motion. I mean, if you have kids and a wife, it's hard to, you have various things tying you down. There are many attack vectors, but lots of people can just leave their jurisdiction with their Bitcoin and start anew. That is the cool thing about one of the cool things about Bitcoin, for those that can be in motion like that. Now, I do want to go back to Brandon and the specifics of the report. And what I thought was interesting, you bring up privacy coins. The report, the DOJ knows about privacy coins. The DOJ knows about DeFi. Okay, these are easy scapegoats / targets, which gives me and then on in the other side of the United States government, we know that they're going to allow banks to hold Bitcoin now. So I think there are targets and scapegoats out there in cryptocurrency where the government can say, hey, look, we're dealing with all the nasty people with the privacy coins and the DeFi scams. And Bitcoin, they don't have to really even deal with Bitcoin. So, Brandon, what was your take on the privacy coin mention? And to me, it seems like if the report is bad, it's probably bad for coins and entities other than Bitcoin. But take it away, Brandon.
Yeah, I think that last point you made is absolutely correct. I view cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin, any of the enterprise blockchain, any of this cutesy stuff, those are all just shields for Bitcoin. They're distractions. They're just a red herring that ties up resources. And I think that's the most important thing that those things can serve. They are nobly serving Bitcoin, and it's ironic that they don't know it. And so I find that poetic justice to be really nice. And a quote that Bitcoin Sign Guy always says that always stuck with me is that the people on the front lines trying to promote Bitcoin, making it more normalized, trying to create an intransigent minority, et cetera, we're all just providing cover fire so Bitcoin can get through the door. And that's just a fantastic quote, right? We have to raise this thing up to the point where it can no longer be stopped. And are we at that point? Probably not. But it feels like we're getting really close, and it feels like momentum's picking up. And for Bitcoin's benefit, the world's in a pretty chaotic place. And I can't imagine public sentiment switching to this internet money when we have all these other super important things to deal with. And so I feel optimistic we've got a smoke screen for quite a while yet. To go back to the report, I'll bring out some specifics that I thought were important. They did call out DeFi, and they said, hey, it's just like ICOs. Complicated scams that are expensive to enforce, but we'll do it anyways. And so I think the egregious DeFi ones, the low-hanging fruit, they'll sweep out like usual, scare the rest of the people. Interestingly, for privacy coins, they said using privacy coins is considered high risk and indicative of potential criminal activity. And I don't really like that narrative. The fact that you want to keep your financial history private, that means you're probably a criminal, but not surprising from the people who decided to say that. And related, they said if we seize privacy coins, they pull out Monero, etc., they're not going to liquidate them. They're not going to sell them back into the market because those same privacy coins might be used for criminal activity in the future. And so imagine, and I saw this on someone summarized the report, and he was saying, imagine the US having a warehouse of seized dollars that they don't want to put back into the market. I thought that was pretty funny. Again, with the nanny state. And then,
what do you think they'll do? What do you think they'll do with that? I mentioned this on yesterday's show, that exact quote. Are they going to burn them? This will be good for Monero if they actually confiscate Monero and then they don't sell it. They just burn it. I mean, it's kind of funny. I thought the whole thing was hilarious. But continue. I mean, what do you think they're really serious about that? They'll keep the Monero they seized? That's unbelievable.
I think that was an ideological stance that they're going to change their mind on in the future. There's really no logic to back that up. Like, do you seize drug money dollars? No, that goes right into the budget of our government. They're not going to burn the dollars. They're not going to burn the Monero. That makes no sense to me. They also brought up the peer-to-peer exchanges, the BIS, the HODL, etc., and they consider them money services businesses. And that means that they need to apply with all the AML laws, KYC, etc. And I don't think that's a good thing. Like, we do want the ability to access KYC free Bitcoin, especially for the people who really need it. And so again, if those exchanges get too big, they're probably going to be targeted. And I'm not proficient enough to understand if that's possible or what the implications are, but that's not a good thing that they're being targeted.
Yeah. I have no problem with those little Eastern European exchanges out there. United States should just leave them alone, or let them do what they're going to do. No KYC, I'm a fan of. All right. Rest of the panel. Brandon really gave a good summary there. Do you guys have any comments on the many topics that he brought up there?
Yeah, what I'll just say is this is going to be a very interesting test of decentralization for DeFi and for those privacy coins that claim to be super anonymous and private. All right. I hope you guys are right, because if you're wrong, you're going to be in some pretty deep water.
Yes. And I love the term Bitcoin shield. The altcoins and all the nonsense out there serves as a shield for Bitcoin. And yeah, it's easy. You're going to learn the difference between decentralized and centralized. The ones they pick off easy are the things that are centralized, the things where they can find the founder and throw him in jail and shut down the office. I
don't see these guys falling for the marketing tactics. So they will be able to look right past the marketing tactics and figure out if it's really decentralized or not. And for, I think, all of them, they're pretty centralized.
Yeah, to say the least. John, any closing thoughts on this, the government and privacy coins, etc.?
Well, just one, and this might take us off onto a tangent you don't want to go down, but do you think is it still on the table that like a constitutional argument is at some point made about Bitcoin being, speech rather than quote unquote money? Because I kind of think that if these regulations become onerous enough, somebody will try to make that case. Now, we don't exist in the greatest era to really uphold many elements of the Constitution. They seem easily swept aside these days. So maybe it's a waste of time to do so. But do you guys think that is ever something that helps preserve, or keep the regulators away from Bitcoin?
Dude, you said the word Constitution, and what I was going to say is, you think people care about the Constitution in the United States today? Do you see what's going? I mean, it's a legitimate. We have smart people, lawyers who can make legitimate constitutional arguments. Pelosi cares about the Constitution? I mean, no one. I wish we were still living in that civilized era that we were living in like 4 years ago or whatever. But you could get lawyers to make those arguments, I'm sure. But it's unfortunate. We've gone far away from constitutional arguments. It seems.
I know. It's a shame.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that? What John said?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to make a Bitcoin analogy. I feel like the Constitution, it's very difficult to run a full Constitution node at home on your computer. So we have this great white paper, And then we're now seeing the result of when you can't run the numbers on that white paper, when individuals can't run the numbers. So what makes me really optimistic about Bitcoin is that if you're running your own full node at home on your computer, you can tell if somebody is breaking the rules, and you can boot them off of the network. The Constitution, I think, is an amazing document, and it was extremely disruptive at the time that it was released. And unfortunately, it didn't solve the problem of human nature and centralizing power over time. I'm hoping that Bitcoin does, though.
Okay. Brandon, I don't know if you even heard everything we were talking about, because you got kicked off there for a second. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you know we're even, Constitution or anything like that?
I caught the back end. I don't have anything important to say to that one.
All right. Let's go on to a guy. Well, we're living in an era where, constitutions, and I respect the Constitution. Great document, great, love it, powerful. But we've got a guy, and so we've got SJWs out there. We've got postmodernists out there. Nothing is true. There are no rules anymore. Corporations are evil, and we got a guy at a corporation, Coinbase, who he's not getting into this political nonsense anymore. Brian Armstrong made the proclamation that if you're going to be political, that they're not political at Coinbase, and he'll pay you to leave. And apparently 5% of the people left Coinbase. So he put his money where his mouth was. They had their beliefs, and they left. So I kind of like that. Let everybody get along. I mean, we so many distractions out there today. I think it's terrible that corporate culture has become so SJW now. Corporations can do what they want to do, but I'd like to see a corporation like this, that is a cryptocurrency corporation, go in that direction. So we'll start with Brandon. What are your thoughts on the overall Brian Armstrong and politics Coinbase story?
Yeah, there's a lot to dispute Coinbase on. I don't think they necessarily align with Bitcoin's long-term mission, but I don't fault them for that. They're a business. They want to make money, and making money means shitcoins in this industry. So they're following their mandate. That's fine. They've done a lot of good for Bitcoin, but I don't see them as a long-term ally. But all that being said, we got to give Coinbase credit here. I think that this is the right move. I think that it's an important stance that they made. What's shocking to me and what's telling of the times is that it was a controversy to start with. And I mean, maybe I'm insulated because I'm in Bitcoin land, but in the Swan office, virtual office, this type of thing would never be a problem. And I again, just shocked that that's where we are. It's very clear that that's where we are, but got to give Coinbase props on this one.
Yeah, I agree. Phil?
I think this is a pretty sensitive topic in today's day and age. What I will say is that it's pretty it's great that the 5% of people who disagreed with it were able to go on and find another company to work with, right? They have that freedom. They have the ability to say, nope, I don't support the statement or the mission of the company that I work for. I'm going to leave and go find a different company. So all power to those people. I think, Brian's position is kind of an impossible situation. It's lose-lose. You're never going to please everybody all the time. And I think in today's day and age, everybody and everything is becoming more and more politicized. So I'll kind of echo Brandon's sentiment. I don't know if Coinbase overall is necessarily aligned with Bitcoin's long-term trajectory. I think they could probably make a few changes to address that. But I do have to give Brian props where props are due, in that he put out a statement in an impossible situation, and 95% of his company thought it was an acceptable statement. And the 5% of people who felt that they couldn't, stand for whatever Coinbase's mission was, have gone on to find another job. And I think that that's really the best possible outcome in an impossible situation.
Very good summary there. John?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what the guys have already said. You got a lot of criticism for Coinbase and Brian, but I think this was the right move. I'd love to see more of it, but I think, like both of the guys have just said. I mean, we are in this hyper politicized time. I bring up the book a lot, but it's very reminiscent of the passage or the chapter in The Sovereign Individual, where they detail what it was like living in medieval Europe. I can't remember the period, but when the church was so intrusive into every aspect of your life, and they exacted their taxes, and then just like everything was connected back to the church. And I think it makes no wonder that this is the way things are. So I don't think Brian's move is going to turn the tide. I think it was a right move, but I think, you know, money is that as the money fails, its role, money is governance, right? Money coordinates behavior. And as it breaks down, more of that governance has to be pushed up into the social layer. And naturally, when that social layer has more behavior that it has to coordinate, it's going to be more, there's going to be more opportunity for contentiousness. And that's just going to mean that these conversations and these issues are more important, they're more top of mind, they're more relevant in even more things, you know, corporations and, you know, like we've been saying, everything we do. So I don't think, and that's just the trend that we're in right now. And I don't think we're on the downslope of it yet. I think we would all agree that because Bitcoin is such a better form of money, that it'll be such a better form of governance and coordination of behavior and activity. And that will mean that that trend will reverse as we start to use more Bitcoin, as Bitcoin is more adopted and distributed and used in commerce and as money around the world. But I think it gets a little bit more tangly before it gets better.
All right. Well, we're talking about CEOs making decisions, making statements. Let's talk about this crypto noise from earlier this week. And I'll let this be an open. Anyone can chime in here on this guy, because I don't care too much about him. But why Hedgeye CEO sold his Bitcoin? So, yeah, there was on Twitter, he made a big announcement. He was proud that he sold his Bitcoin. Who wants to comment on this? Anyone out there?
Well, I'll just say he's a trader, and so he's going to trade every asset. I mean, I'm not a trader. I'm a hodler, and I buy Bitcoin, and I keep it secure, and I never, ever sell it. And that's my approach. And so you know, you weather the ups and downs. Of course, everyone's been enticed to trade at some point, but, you know, dude is a professional trader, and I don't think it would be, I don't think he didn't say he wouldn't buy it back. So I guess he thinks there's going to be an opportunity for a trade, and fair play, you know.
Yeah, he said he'd be willing to buy it back again. So, I mean, it just, for everyone out there, you know, the juggling of the Bitcoin, I don't think it ever works too well. I'm a strong hander, and I don't want to put this guy on a pedestal or anything, but he got a lot of, it made some news at the beginning of the week, so I thought I would throw it out there.
Also, it's great to make fun of weak hands. I mean, come on, we got to do that. This is why we're on Twitter in the first place.
Yeah, I think people like him, because, you know, he's selling sats to people like me at $11,000, 12 years into Bitcoin's lifespan, and so, you know, we need people like him. We need people to make bad decisions and sell their Bitcoin. So I thank him for his service, and yeah, it's, you know, making fun of people's weak hands is just great, because we're all about strong hands here.
Strong hand, baby. All right, Brandon, I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but you actually have a very interesting, if you do, you can say something, but you've got a very interesting story out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's an old story, but since I brought it up to you, or since you tweeted about it, you've researched it more. It's important to know French and able to, in order to understand this story also. So I don't know if you have anything to comment about the CEO, or do you just want to talk about the Congo thing?
Yeah, I'll touch on Hedgeye first. So I think it's funny that I think this is probably his first time bumping into Bitcoin Twitter, because he went on this emotional rant, and he was like, well, I thought Bitcoin people ran the numbers. They're all emotional, whatever. And so I think what's interesting here is the cybernetic swarm of Bitcoin people on Twitter. Sailor quote, we do swarm anyone who says anything about Bitcoin. You know, if you're a famous person, you tweet Bitcoin, you're going to get 10,000 followers that day, and we're all going to retweet it. If you say something bad about Bitcoin, we're going to relentlessly schoolyard bully you with some absolutely hilarious memes. And if you can't take a joke, you're going to be offended, and you're going to be like, oh, the Bitcoin people are mean. And I don't really know if that's good or bad, but it's absolutely true. And you see guys like Peter Schiff just farming us for engagement. Yeah. He's irrelevant. and then he chirps about Bitcoin, and all of a sudden he's relevant. I bet his business has been booming since he's been chirping about Bitcoin. And so whatever we want to call it, it's kind of like the Streisand effect, but we should probably rename it to like the Nakamoto effect or something like that. But it's real and it's going to continue. And so people who want engagement are going to take advantage of this, and that's going to work in Bitcoin's favor. So I just think that's pretty funny, number one. Number two, another person who works at Hedgeye is Neil Howe, who wrote a book called The Fourth Turning, which is essentially looking at demographic cycles that play out through history. The thesis is essentially every 80 to 100 years, the young people tear down all the old institutions. Kind of as a species, we outgrew the institutions and we rebuild. And I'm writing an article right now about Bitcoin through the lens of this thesis. And again, the author works for Hedgeye. And so far, he's been pretty lukewarm on Bitcoin. I've been tagging him on Twitter. I've been emailing him. He doesn't respond. And so, Neil, if you're listening, you're going to see an article come out in the next month or so. And I'd love your comments. Preferably, I'd love your comments before I publish. Just check your inbox. It's sitting there. It's waiting for you. Yeah, we'll flip your opinion on Bitcoin after you're done reading. So I'll just pause on that before we get into DRC, unless you want me to jump right into that.
Great description of what Peter Schiff does. He's farming pointers, guys. Don't be a cow for Peter. So many people fall for it. No, yeah. Before we get to DRC, did you guys have anything? I didn't know you would have so much to say about that, Brandon. Very good. Anything else to add, guys? All right, cool. Brandon, take it away with this DRC stuff, man. I'm really fascinated by it.
Yeah. So essentially, I heard about this through a Bitcoiner named Yves. I forgot exactly what his last name is, but he lives in Switzerland, speaks French, and I had just an impromptu meetup talking about Bitcoin and biology, and he brought it up. And so essentially what the story is there's a national park in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, and this park is called Virunga. It's one of the most biodiverse places in Africa. And it's a really important place for the country. It's rich in natural resources. 4 million people live nearby. And the country is very poor. You know, they live on less than $2 a day. And so essentially what they did was they created a coalition of private and public people to create a task force to try to leverage this natural resource in order to help the people. And so they're trying to produce energy assets. Essentially, they're putting in hydroelectric dams to prevent the people from deforestation, because the people there deforest the land to create coal to cook their food. So people are just trying to survive. And if you're trying to survive, conserving the environment is not of your priority, rightfully so. And so they can save the natural environment by providing economic benefit to the region. And so they already produce these dams. There's like 100 megawatts worth of power being produced. And up until this point, there's not anywhere near enough demand to recoup that investment cost. And so what they're doing is they're starting to mine Bitcoin in the national park to subsidize that energy asset, which is fantastic. It also saves the environment because it prevents deforestation. It provides economic relief. They're turning these energy assets into banks where the local people can somehow take loans. I don't understand it exactly. It's all translated from French, but they're taking loans and then they're repaying the interest with increased energy costs in the future. And so it's a pretty cool story. It actually goes really deep. And yeah, I mean, I could go on for a while on this, but
the big question, why isn't anyone talking about this? This is from the summer, actually, when this story originated. Is it because it's in French?
That's a good question. I'm not sure why it hasn't broke news. It was hard to find good information, and I have some correspondence with people involved here that they make it sound like it's a really touchy subject. And so there's a lot of violence in the region as people are trying to survive. So they're taking advantage of natural resources. So my guess is it's sort of a war zone, and they don't want to have Bitcoin available. They don't want to draw attention to it. And so that's my guess. And so I don't know how hard we want to pump this narrative, but it looks really good for Bitcoin. It's economic development. It's so many different things. And so I'm pretty excited about it. And yeah, I encourage people to look more into it. You can DM me on Twitter if you want the information I have. I'll share it with you.
Oh, dude, it's awesome. I mean, you did some research into this. We've got unique beast information here, insider information, dudes. You only hear this stuff on this very show. It's odd, a national park and Bitcoin. It's a crazy combination, but good luck to them. And I know it is a very, I've known of people that have dealings down there. It's dangerous. It's wild out there. So this is one of the Bitcoin. Everyone's always said, what will Bitcoin do in these developing nations? Well, they got creative over there. All right, so clearly we've gotten close to the end of the show here. I want everybody to pound that like button first of all, but I want the dudes on the panel to tell us what they're up to and just any news that was left off. We'll start with Phil. You always have something to say about what you're doing down there in Austin with Unchained.
We've had quite an exciting month at Unchained Capital. So a couple weeks ago, we launched our advanced business accounts, which gives you the business logic that you need to run a company while building it on top of collaborative multi-sig. So if you're the CEO of a company and your company is interested in allocating some Bitcoin, some resources to Bitcoin, check out our advanced business accounts, and we can actually help you and your company control your own private keys. So that was a very, very big release for us. Up next week, actually, we're launching cold card support. So we have a lot of Bitcoiners out there that I know that are a huge fan of cold card. We've taken quite a while to develop a pretty unique integration that I think you guys are going to totally love. And right now we have a promo as well, where if you set up your Vault profile at Unchained Capital, you can get a discount code for 10% off of a cold card. So if you've been waiting to test out multi-signature with us, now's a really good time. You can get a cold card ordered and get 10% off. If you want help getting set up with multi-sig, we have our Vault Concierge service where we'll walk you through everything, and then at the end of building your vault, we'll put $1,000 of Bitcoin into it. So we're working on some big things at Unchained. Excited about this month's and last month's releases, and we have some exciting releases coming up in the future. So check us out.
Dude, you are in motion. You can check out all three of these dudes, people. Click on their Twitters, link to below. Follow them. Seriously, good stuff. That's how you learn. You're not a servant of the algorithm. You don't watch what Twitter tells you to watch. You check out on your own these guys. All right, John, what do you have to say here? News? Anything that was forgotten? What are you up to? What's going on?
No, I think we covered a lot of good news. In Bitcoin land, I'm just still really enjoying playing around with the medium that is podcasts and videos and stuff on YouTube. I love talking to all sorts of Bitcoiners, whether they be guys that kind of the head of the industry, quote unquote, or people that quote unquote normal Bitcoiners. In fact, Brandon, releasing today a chat with Tyler Campbell, who I believe is a Minneapolis Bitcoiner. Great guy, and it's such a pleasure to connect with these people. So loving doing that. And actually, I had a question for you, Phil. The business, what you guys just released, that's like what jurisdictionally, in terms of clients, that can serve international clients, right?
Correct. Yeah. So for Vault, we can serve clients in all of the countries except for the OPAC list countries. You do have to go through the sort of KYC onboarding for your business. But as long as you get through the onboarding, clients from any country are welcome to run an advanced business account through us, which I think is really fantastic, because it's like, as a company, you get to hold your own keys, not your CFO's keys, not your company's Bitcoin. And then we provide monthly statements and reports and transaction history, and then different user types as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to check that because that was a question that I got about the product 2 or 3 days ago. So, I guess some Canadian companies might be knocking on your door soon.
Yeah, hit us up. Definitely reach out to me on Twitter or schedule time with one of our team members on our website.
Sweet.
I love it. People are connecting here. Knocking on heaven's door. All right. We'll conclude with Brandon. Any news? What are you up to? You made a great debut, man. You rock it, dude.
Hey, thanks, Adam. First off, great hanging with you guys. John's one of my favorite interviewers in the space. We've recorded a few conversations together. I look forward to doing that over the campfire with or without a microphone sometime. And Phil and the Unchained guys, a group that I hold in the highest regard in the Bitcoin community. So super cool to be with you guys. Always an honor. And Adam, first time with you. I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the narrative here. So thanks for having me on. In terms of a couple quick shills, I work at Swan. We just have an easy platform to automatic dollar cost average. So you just connect your bank account, set your plan, $50 a week or $100 a month or whatever you want to do. And then we auto pull from your bank account, and then you can auto withdraw into cold storage if you choose. And so, yeah, just set it up once and be done. We're going fast. It's been fun working there. And one episode we have coming up on our podcast, Swan Signal Live, next Tuesday. We have the Giga Chad Michael Saylor coming on, and he's going to be on with Danielle DiMartino Booth, who's not as warm to Bitcoin. So we'll see how that conversation goes. But Michael's got some charisma, so we'll see. Definitely check that one out. And if you want to get started with Swan, you can go to swanbitcoin.com/Quittem, my last name, and that'll give you $10 worth of free Bitcoin if you.
All right, continue your thought there.
Yeah, just to wrap up, if any of this was interesting and you want to chat, I write about Bitcoin and biology mostly, and I've written a bunch about that. And I also have an article coming up on the fourth turning in Bitcoin. So if you've read that book, those ideas are interested. I'm looking for editors. I'm looking for people to bounce ideas off. I'm trying to get that out this month. So hit me up on Twitter. Come say hello.
All right. It was a great show, everyone. You know you get this every single Friday. Remember to subscribe to the channel. You get shows every day, beyond Bitcoin, all sorts of exciting stuff over here. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Pound that like button. Shabbat Shalom. Everybody have a good Simchat Torah this weekend. I know I will. See you guys later. Thank you, everyone out there. Retweet it. Follow these guys.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Appreciate it.